What's up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2018 Innovation Award winner, 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner, given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also co-host and co-produce the only online show in the world for dads, fathers, and male caregivers. That's sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care, and being part of that movement, we've reached out directly and indirectly to over 400,000 dads, fathers, and male caregivers around the world. And as we come to the end of 2025, I'm speaking that by the end of the year or early next year, we'll be able to say 500,000. So good morning from the Morning Vibe on the first day of December 2025, December 1st. And Ryan Knight is in the house. Looks like he's wearing a hoodie because usually he's all suited up, but he's hoodied up a little bit today.
Yes. I had to step outside real quick, and now it's winter chill. It was brisk. There was some flurries over the weekend, but when the car is just full of ice pellets and the air is chill, yeah, winter is here way early. It's supposed to be December 20th approximately that winter comes. Nah, it hit December 1st, right on the dot. So for those that may forget where I'm from, my name is Ryan Knight. I'm one of the co-founders of the Afro Caribbean Business Network. We support entrepreneurs of African and Caribbean heritage, really to figure out what stage the business is in and help them create a strategy to grow. We've been working for over 8 years. We celebrate our 8-year anniversary. And we also support with our microloan program and marketing and sales with our ACBN Creative Works Agency. But I'm also an entrepreneur. I do run a company called Detailing Nights. So we provide mobile waterless car cleaning. So we go to people's houses or their offices, clean the cars on the spot without using water, and our plant-based eco-friendly cleaning supplies. But as I mentioned, today, if we were in your driveway, our products would just be freezing. So we typically shut it down, cool off, although we still have some government contracts that we're doing. But my whole mood changes. That's why I enjoyed the morning vibe, because it gets my vibe back. Because winter just adjusts it the wrong way.
Well, okay, but realize we had snow a few weeks ago.
Yeah, but it was snowing even on the weekend. It was snow and then it rained. So it was still like 0, 3 degrees. Now it's just, I think we're at -6, and before the wind chill is just. So if you didn't shovel that wet snow, that is frozen on your driveway now. So I hope everybody shoveled their snow.
So Fitness IQ Cam says morning, and she says winter is not here.
As soon as I change from my fall jacket to my winter jacket, that means winter is official. I was holding out. I had my fall jacket holding out because even it was a struggle to change from spring to fall. But yeah, winter parka is on point now.
Well, I was out on Saturday evening, and then coming home, that was serious snow. And as I was saying on the Black Canada Talking yesterday and Black Men Can Talk, plug, that driving home was an experience because I was driving along the 401, which is a major highway in Greater Toronto, and they hadn't plowed, so you couldn't see the lane markings.
Ooh, yes.
And as slushy, snowy, you couldn't. Now, the blessing was there wasn't many cars on the road, but it was quite, as I said yesterday, it was a drive I hadn't experienced in a long time, or it's been a long time since I've been on a highway where you had to guesstimate where the lane markings were.
And you're just like watching everybody else, right? I was like, okay, where are you?
No one there. Like you're just like, is there a white line something here? Let me guess. Let's not go too fast. Let's not spin out.
Yeah.
All those sort of things. But winter, look, when I was in school, winter was one of the things that Canada was recognized for. So
yes, that's true.
So that's so to speak. What did you do during your weekend?
Yeah, what was happening? What I was talking about on last show, the Sustainable Finance World Forum, that's continuing to go. So I pop into some of those sessions. But Sunday was very quiet. Definitely just chilled with the family. I was out and about doing errands with Christian, my son, just so yeah, it was nice and calming.
So is Christmas season hit traffic wise out there?
No, I don't
Oh,
know. I think we got a good amount of our Christmas shopping done, so I
okay.
haven't been in malls. Yeah,
It,
not seeing mega traffic just yet.
it's interesting you mentioned that. I was out at an event, like, as I mentioned, on Saturday, and I was chatting with someone who lives in Whitby, and they're saying their favorite this lady loves to shop, and her favorite mall is the Scarborough Town Center.
Okay.
And I said, I've lived in Scarborough for years. I may have been there once in the last 20 years.
Wow.
I do not. I'm not a big mall person. I like to go in and
Yeah.
out, but I have, for some reason, Scarborough Town Center, cross. Like, I don't go there. And I do, if I have to do any buying, because I think there's a difference between shopping and buying, that
Mhm.
I either do it on online or on online auction sites.
Okay. So were you a big eBay back in the
Uh,
day? Would you buy a lot of stuff on eBay?
I wouldn't say eBay, but there's sites, auction sites, and it's funny because when I was out at this event on, say, three of us, myself and two gentlemen, we were talking about the wonderful experiences we were having on these online auction sites. I had actually informed of these sites to these two gentlemen. They're saying, "Thank you, Doctor Vibe. Like this, they're the bomb. Bam, 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 etc." Yeah, fitness. IQ Cam says, yes, wow, Scarborough Town Center, STC. Yes, I do know what that means. Over 20 years as well. Yeah, I don't see any purpose. Like, I've picked up people that go there, but
Mhm.
I don't go in because, but this person on Saturday was saying, oh, they got all the stores and this is good for them.
Gotcha, gotcha.
But no, I don't do a lot of the town center stuff. Yeah. But and the
Mhm.
funny thing is it 40 or 50 years old, Scarborough Town Center now? It's at least 40, if
Oh,
not
yeah, I
50
wouldn't say
years
no.
old. But no, so you were out and about on Sunday. Yeah, yesterday,
Mhm.
getting up in the morning, doing the shoveling of wet snow,
Yes.
which is the worst type of snow, the
Heavy.
heavy snow, and then the
Yes.
rain. And I haven't gone outside there yet, but it's a deceiving day. It may be sunny outside, but I know it's chilly.
Yeah, and I had Christian helping me shovel, and he was experiencing that weight, the heavy
Heavy
snow.
snow, the
Gotta
heavy
put your
worst type
muscles
of snow.
into it.
Yeah, the worst type of snow, the heavy, heavy snow. But
Yeah.
December's here. There's one more month, and on the morning, we got a full roster of people coming on this morning. We've got Donovan coming up this morning. Uh, then Friday we have Wayne Harris. Next Monday we've got Carolyn. We've got Dr. Tachi coming up this month.
Nice,
We
nice.
also have, of course, Emma, and we also tentatively have someone coming on to talk about Canada's uh, affordable housing crisis.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be a good combo.
So we have a full roster of guests for the last month of the year, and I know we'll probably take a little bit of a break over the holiday season, depending on how much Ryan's available. Well, I love to broadcast, so even if it's just putting it out there, but we will take it maybe a little bit of a break. Let me just see here.
Yeah, because a lot of the holidays are gonna be Thursdays this
Oh,
year.
are they?
So it's
Okay,
Christmas is Thursday, and then New
okay,
Year's
okay.
is Thursday. Yeah, so
So, good gentlemen, it's look at Ray. It's such a pleasure to hear you two complain about Canadian winter. I'm not complaining about it. I know how to deal with it. I'm not complaining. I know how to deal with it. Stay in my yard, right, as much as possible.
right, right.
And that's my alternative. Stay in my yard, man. That's the best way to deal with it. But other than that, everything else is okay with Ryan. Any more events coming up with ACBN before the end of the year?
We are planning to do something at the end of the year where it is a full planning of 2026. So
Okay.
we're thinking the actual New Year's Day, so December 31st.
Oh,
So stay tuned for that, where we're going to work on, hey, what is your plan for 2026? And we're going to work together, maybe like a half day workshop.
okay.
So yeah, stay tuned for that. And also one session for nonprofits to help them with their capacity building. There's the Calabash organization that's putting that
Yes.
together, so we're
Yes.
supporting. That's
Christopher.
December the 17th.
I have to get him on the show. We have to get him
Yes,
on the show
Christopher
one of these
Chocolate.
days. All right. All right. So,
True.
well,
Yes.
yeah, he has not been on. He has not been on. All right. Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back from the break, we'll do some housework, and then we'll have Donovan Martin Sr. from the Daily Scrum Room, Daily Scrum News. Excuse me. We're going to be chatting about Africa and coups, imperialism, all that stuff. So we'll be back in a bit. Here we go.
Make sure that you check the Morning Vibe this Friday live at 9 a.m. Eastern, where financial educator Wayne Harris will be talking about on how to make it a cash Christmas.
Hey, what is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here. Hope you are fine and safe. I'm just doing a little short video showing you the feature where you can call in when we're doing a live show. And I've said it many times on many of my shows, but I said, you know what? Let me do a video and show you. This is the video. When you go to any browser, whether you're using your smartphone, desktop, laptop, whatever digital device, and you go to callme.ro.com, which is here. Also, too, most of the time when I'm doing a broadcast, there will be a QR code that I will show. So whether it's QR code or you're going through some digital device, this is where we're at, callme.ro.com. Then what you want to do is put in this code, FSP-L8L. Now, once you put that in, you hit continue. And once you go into continue, you want to make sure that you have echo cancellation in green and mic gain in green. And then all you need to do is put in your name, and I'm going to put Dr. Vibe here. I need to spell it correctly. Dr. Vibe. And then once you've done that, all you need to do is click on join call. And that's it. Looking forward to having you call in. I just wanted to show a video because I know you want to call in, but I want to show you. So looking forward to hearing you live on the Dr. Vibe Show. As always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and remember to give yourself grace. God bless, peace be well, keep the faith, and walk good. All right, we are back. We are back. So that gives you a little bit of visual. Like I said, I was explaining it, using it. I said, let's just show people. Let's show them how to get on. All right. As always, subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. Follow the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Substack. Also, join the Morning Vibe Discord group. You can email me at dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com or click on the link. Advertise your business, product, or service on any of our platforms. Email me. That's the best way. And then finally, can't forget, I mentioned her a few moments ago, Dr. Tache. I like to say Dr. Tache, who's the power behind Indie Soup Media, independent content creators platform on YouTube. 2 years of operation, 28,000 subscribers. Remember, only 4% of all YouTube channels have over 10,000 subscribers. So go check it out. You'll see content like this on that platform. All right. We have the man, the legend. I was going to say myth. The man, the legend from Winnipeg with us this morning. Donovan Martin Sr. of the Daily Scrum News, and himself and Ryan were having, I guess, a comparison, how cold can it get conversation.
Yes.
We
were humbled by the West.
Yes. So Donovan is in Winnipeg, and Donovan, just share some of the highlights of the cold conversation you were having with us in regards to how cold it can get there. Okay, you are on mute. You need to unmute yourself.
Perfect. Agreed.
There we go. We got you.
Perfect. So today is a pretty warm day. We are at minus 15. So with the wind chill, we reach minus 21. So that's considered pretty warm for us here. When it reaches around minus 40, that's when the cold really starts to sink in. So we're still a bit off. We'll see probably minus 40 around January, late December. With the windshield, we'll get up to minus 50. We'll get maybe 2 3 days of minus 60. Um,
Minus 60.
yeah,
Yeah. What is happening?
yeah. So we don't shut down in Winnipeg.
That's supposed to be Alaska weather.
Yeah,
-60.
it's actually funny you say that because on average, every Winnipegger has at least four winter boots, probably four different ski pants, maybe five, six winter jackets. Like
Mhm.
myself, I have boots that are rated for minus 100,
Wow.
and they are probably the heaviest things you'll ever find. But
Mm.
it's just normal. Schools do not shut down until they reach minus 50. Um, 3 feet of snow, it's just a regular day. So unless there's a blizzard, it's just a regular day.
Right, right. That's amazing.
Okay. All right. So there needs to be a question, and I'll just put up the comment here from Fitness IQ Cam. I'm not going to repeat it.
Right.
We'll just leave that
That
there
is
to
a
bear.
standard response to that kind of weather.
Yes. So just I'm sure someone's gonna would like to ask, but they're afraid to. So I'm gonna ask, why did you choose Winnipeg with weather like that?
Oh, that's pretty simple. I immigrated here when I was small, and I just kind of had no choice. Actually, true story. My first day in Winnipeg was in the blizzard. So coming from plus 32 a blizzard. So that was my
Oh, goodness.
first foray into
Wow.
Winnipeg. And I'll tell you a quick follow up story. Um, so 2 days after it was my first day in school, grade one, and we were part of a lunch program. So we'd eat and then go over to the lunch program, which was attached directly to the school. And so one of the kid told me that in order for lunch to be served, I needed to pull this nice little red lever on the wall with the big bell.
Oh no.
Oh, wow. Oh, no.
So being from Jamaica,
Mm.
don't know anything. So of course he told me, okay, I'm like, it's lunchtime. You need to pull this nice little
Oh
red lever.
no.
And I pulled it.
Ooh.
It wasn't fun. Let's just say I
And
figured out.
were you the only melanated child in that school too?
No, there was quite a bit of us,
Okay, good.
but I figured out quickly that maybe why I have a phobia of fire alarms.
Oh,
Oh.
no. You
No,
see,
no.
that's some early trauma.
Yeah, early. It was
You know what?
The print would be
That's
heavy.
another thing Don and Evan and I haven't come. I know I haven't thought about this. So you brought I know when I was in public school one year, I did the same thing. I pulled the fire alarm by accident.
Oh,
I did
no.
that. I did that. Yes. They never found out it was me, but yeah.
Yeah.
So I can relate. So Fitness IQ came after our weather conversation is I know I live in the right place. All right. So today, man, you wanted to come in and chat about coups in Africa or liberation from Western influence. Why that topic?
It, it's an important topic because there's really, depending on where you get your news, because news are siloed, right? So we tend to focus on news from places we watch the most. So if you're in Canada, you likely will watch your news from the big network, who are getting handsomely paid by the government. The story. And if you're in the U.S., you get your news depending on where you fall on the political ideology, whether you're left or right. And then everybody else who are more is more in tune with what's going on are now increasingly getting their news from smaller outlets like ourselves, or social media, people who are actually showing what's going on.
Hmm.
And so when you hear a coup in Africa, right? The first thing you hear is all the negative sentiments that come around with the coup, right? A military junta has now taken over. Um, they've suspended the constitution. They're mass riots. They're depriving the people, and that's the rhetoric you hear. And a lot of the rhetorics, the vast majority of it, is coming from Western news organizations, heavily um,
Right.
organizations from France. The BBC is atrocious, right? And
Ooh.
that's what you're hearing. The problem with that is you actually never hear the real story, because they have an interest. If we go to France, France has a massive interest because of a lot of their colony, a lot of the African nations were colonized by France, and they're in horrible situation to this date because of the French government, French policies, and a lot of structural adjustment policies where they're forever indebted to France.
Right. Right.
And so the problem is, you hear a coup, and we're portrayed in Western media is, okay, you know what, these countries or these military leaders are trying to overthrow democratically elected governments, and
Hmm.
it's a bad thing. But what you never hear is, let's take two examples. The latest coup, which is in Guinea-Bissau, former Portuguese colony, but still has strong ties to, of all places, France. Go figure, right?
Right.
And the thing you hear is, the military comes in, they overthrow the the president, they arrest him, and they're suspending the constitution. And these are all the things you're hearing. But here's what the Western media never told you in any of these coverages is, number one, the president was looking to redo the Constitution to change the term limits, how long a president could hold power, which was something he campaigned on.
Ah.
Number two, you never hear that Guinea-Bissau is the biggest narco country in all of Africa, where they are the jumping off point for all the drugs coming in from Latin America, Colombia, and make their way through Guinea-Bissau, offload straight to Europe, which is something the government said they would curtail, right?
Hmm.
And so you never hear that part of the story. You never hear that in order to be the government, you are essentially play a huge role in the cartel drug smuggling. You do not get elected in Guinea-Bissau without the help of the drug cartel or the powers that be. And the military plays a massive role in that too, right? Because nothing goes in and out.
But were you saying that this person that did get in, they were helped by the cartel, so they couldn't get rid of it, or they weren't, and they were trying to?
They were unaware,
Okay.
right? And the part of him being in was, okay, how do we? One of his promises was to clean up the drug issues,
Right.
right? But for a smaller African nation where everything is intertwined, it's impossible
Yeah.
to not be in power. And so in this cases, you have this conflict where the military is coming in saying, well, we're going to clean it up. However, again, it's hard not to understand that factions of the military are intertwined, right?
Hmm.
So in this specific incident, it becomes now, is the military genuinely trying to clean this up, or they're trying to oust a person who may have a turn of heart and thinking of falling out of favors with the powers that be. But one of the things that's very interesting is when you listen to the statement provided by the junta or the military leaders, it has very strong Western undertone type of language.
Gotcha.
So that's a big thing. And then, of course, the most popular, people call it coup, I call it an uprising or a reckoning, is what happened in Burkina Faso, right? Which a few years ago has set the stage for everything that's happening in Africa right now. You know, the government was literally a puppet government of the French government, right?
Gotcha.
And so everything was not being done in the best interest of the people of Burkina Faso. And the simplest way you could look at that is look at all the economic progress since Captain Traore has come into power. And then you look at all of the nationalization of the natural resources and rare earth metals, right? So Burkina Faso has now reclaimed all of their mines, all of their natural earth. And one of the glaring examples of that is if you look at uranium, I believe they were literally getting pennies on the dollars per pound or kilo for uranium. And then France was then taking that and selling it for hundreds and hundreds of pounds to the open market.
Right.
And so those are the discrepancies where you have to look at what happened. So Africa is the biggest subsidizer of the France economy, right? And
Whoa.
what a lot of people aren't aware of in the former colonies by France is they have to deposit their essentially their funds into the French reserves, and then if they want to make any major investment, they have to beg the French government back to use their own currency, their own money,
Hmm.
and it's a terrible situation. So you could see why whenever there is a coup, it's framed as something detriment to the African people. But in Africa, it's never framed as a coup. It's framed as an uprising or a shed to colonialism.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Just want to interrupt if I have permission, just updates here. Frequency event promotion says, hi, Dr. Vibe, Donovan Martin Sr. and Ryan Knight. Our My weekend was okay. We're much warmer than Donovan's.
Right.
And let me just see, there's something else going on here. It's good to see Minnie on cam is in the house. Long time no here. Says, yes, keep them unaware. They are not liars. So they're not liable. All
Mhm.
right. That's good. I have a conversation piece for you, Donovan. You were mentioning Burkina Faso. Its 2022 coup invoked anti-French sentiment, while Mali's junta hired Russian Wagner Group. When we talk about these things, are they liberation or shifting alliances?
Well, they're both. They could be both. Because if you talk about the liberation, you just have to look at what's happening right now in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, right? And look at that. You have roads being built, schools being built on mass scales.
Mm.
You have resources. You have jobs. You have the creation of recreating industries that were shut down, like something simple as mango plants and tomato plants. So all of these things you have to say, well, why weren't they happening under the previous president?
Right.
And when it comes to shifting alliances, it's not more about shifting alliances. It's more of what does a true independence look like? And talks about two things. Is you hear a lot that they're shifting away from France or Western or European to countries such as Russia or China or other Middle East nations. And you have to say to it is, well, what's in it for these countries, right? Every country goes into another country because they want something, right? Nobody does it out of the goodness of their heart. Some do. So
Mhm.
if you look at Russia, the significance of Russia is a lot of the African nations stood by Russia when what's going on in Ukraine. And they did that because they also have to, they understand what it means to need things and not get things from Western nations. So Russia has always been there for African nations. And that's the thing you never hear in the news. Russia has supplied them with grain, arms, and has been huge for them when it comes to oil. And there's been amicable relations between them. When it comes to the Wagner Group has been significant. Whether they're mercenaries or whatever, everybody has different names for them. You have to look at it. How did it apply to the African nations? Well, the Wagner Group came in and they immediately took out or replaced the French military and put a squash to a lot of the factions that were attacking or trying to displace the president. Now, they are a mercenary group, but so is the paid military mercenary groups by the US military. So every country has their own set of mercenary groups or former ex military. It's just how the situation is framed. And one last point is when it comes to shifting alliances, you hear that a lot about, China is coming in, they're doing things in Africa, and it's being framed as they're taking over. So, to that aspect, from somebody who's been to China multiple times, is I say, is you have to look at it in the perspective of Africa needs something, Canada needs something, the US, every country needs something. There's no, I'm going to do it and not expect it. The only difference between Russia and China is they're actually giving something back, right? Yes, there will always be issues because that happens in um, every country when you're working together. But let's be honest here. One of the biggest things is look at the infrastructure development that's happening throughout Africa. That would not have been done uh, throughout if they were still aligned with European or Western nations.
Okay, I need to jump in on that because two things. First, I was waiting to see when you were going to bring up China. You bring up all these other countries you're fond about. Some people would say, at what cost, right?
Mm.
Because all of us have Jamaican roots.
Yeah.
And many years ago, there was a highway built by the Chinese from Montego Bay to Kingston. The thing is, most Jamaicans can't afford to use it. So I want to say, are there situations like that when we go to the African continent? And I agree, every country needs something, but then my always say at what cost? Question mark to Africans.
Mm. So the, the the question then becomes is, can these nations afford not to develop, right? Because you have to look at this as when you hear at what cost, you say to yourself is, why can't these people afford to use these highways? Because for decades they were not put in a position to have the resources to use these highways or use something as simple as trains, right? So we have to say to ourselves is we have decades, if not centuries, of people being oppressed or colonized or not having living wages. And how do we now start to change things like this? Because if we are not putting people in that position, then things will never change. So the question is now the cost. So before our generation in Africa, we would have seen nothing, or the Caribbean, we saw what it's like to have no infrastructure, and to us, we probably couldn't afford it then, right? And the people right now maybe cannot afford that. However, if you look at it in the generations, because we have to look at things in generations or decades,
Mm-hmm.
because that's how long these things take to pay off. And that's the same thing if you look at any roads and infrastructure being built in Canada. We also have to say, well, you know, this is a 40 million or 50 billion or whatever the infrastructure. And we're always saying, well, we can't afford that. So our generation maybe cannot afford that. And we're not going to see the benefits of that. Our kids will see that because these are long-term projects. So in a situation like Africa and the US, sorry, Africa and Caribbean nations and Asian nations who are um, needing outside resources to build these, you say to yourself, okay, now we have all these roads and ports being built. It's going to cost right now, but you build a port to a nation and you build a road, the economic benefits of that are massive. It's always said that if you build roads and build ports, you're going to build your economy, right?
Yes, yes.
I'm not saying every deal is perfect, by no means, but here's one of the biggest things is what people need to understand, especially when it comes to working with African nations. There was years ago. This is actually factual coming from the Department of Defense from the U.S. government, and if you search, you'll find it. One of the biggest, they considered a national part of a national emergency is if Africa was able to be connected to um, the Middle East, Europe, by the help of China, because that would be considered, they would no longer be dependent on US. So that was considered a national emergency to how do you stop China from connecting Africa globally.
Wow.
So these are things you got to say, right? And just to your point, Dr. Vibe on China is when they build things, every nation is going in it as, okay, what do we need? It has to benefit us too, right? And when China needs resources, they need massive amount of resources. They need that. But also they know that if we're gonna take resource, if we're gonna get resources, what do African nations need? They need infrastructure, right? And so you say to yourself, well, the Europeans and the Western nations, they came and took all of our rare earth metals, all of our natural resources, but they left us with no infrastructure and they left us with massive debt. They left us dependent on the International Monetary Fund, right? They left us dependent on the World Bank. And in order for us to um, borrow money from them, we have to borrow it in US currencies and pay it back in US currencies. And we have to do that, or they have to do that, while their dollar is worthless. So they become forever in debt to these organizations. And what happens was, when you borrow money from them, they what's called structural adjustment policies, meaning that we're going to lend you money.
Mhm.
We are going to now tell you how you run your country. We're going to tell you that what resources you can no longer import or mine. And so these are things that people don't focus on, why African nations are so poor, and why there's always coups, right? And to get to a word here is, if you look at the biggest thing you hear is, we are, let's say, America, we're sending $10 million worth of aid to Africa. So what people don't know is, aid is tied. If we are sending aid, that means we get something in return. So, for example, if you want to help an African country and you don't send them rice, you send them resources to build up their own and harvest their own rice. But that's forbidden. What
Mhm.
happens is, aid is, if you're going to send aid, that means, let's say we're sending $10 million worth of rice. That $10 million worth of rice has to be purchased from a US producing rice company. And that rice is what gets shipped over to Africa. Not, we're going to give you $10 million to teach you, not teach you, they know how to plant their rice. So that's how, for example, how I believe it was Ghana was the largest producer of rice. And that's how the IMF killed that industry. Is
Whoa.
So these are things why, when you hear the word coup, you really have to say, well, is it a coup, or these nations taking back um, things that were theirs?
Well,
Just one,
yeah.
Ryan, if I have permission to interrupt, just quick. Dr. Tatsi's in the house. He says, "Good morning."
Eh,
Also says, "Sheesh, I just want the West and the diabolical East out of African affairs." And she also says, "The World Bank is just evil. And of course, always usually headed by a European. I used to work at the IFC at the World Bank." And Ray says, "I really appreciate Donovan taking his time to share his insight on geopolitics on the continent."
Thank
So
you.
we're up to date. All right.
Yeah,
Ryan,
I'm
go ahead.
curious with your thoughts on what can be done to increase the negotiating power of the Caribbean and in Africa. Because it seems if the West was coming in extractive and not leaving infrastructure, okay, but there was no like leverage for that to stop at the time. Now there's another option, but the cost of allowing that infrastructure to be built, but now what do we have to give up? So is it like a negotiating issue where we just don't have leverage to negotiate and get better terms, or what could be done to improve that?
No, I think it's, well, I know it's not about the terms are actually, see, I guess the question is when you hear that their terms are not good, where are you hearing that from, right?
Well, that's the question. It's like,
Yeah.
what,
So,
are they getting bad
yeah.
terms, or yeah? Because
So
I've never heard the agreement. You just hear on the. I would say I hear on the media, oh, China is in Africa building all this infrastructure, and then you would hear if they're not able to pay for it, then they lose the ownership of it. Like that's what I would read. So I don't know how true that is.
a lot of that is not necessarily factual, because here's what we need to remember is, prior to, and I will say, I will put the point of reference to what took place in Burkina Faso,
Mhm.
because that is the first real domino to drop, where African nations are saying, okay, there's a blueprint for us taking back our natural resources, right?
Right.
And to give you some more contextual history before that, you had similar presidents in other countries in Africa who were assassinated for doing the exact same thing he's trying to do, right? And you had Obama assassinate Muammar Gaddafi for doing the exact same thing that is about to happen right now, in where is not only with the African nations but the BRICS nations are putting together one unified currency backed by gold and natural resources. Now that was a massive scare to the American, because that means the dollar would no longer be the world's reserve currency, because it's a fiat currency. It's not backed by anything. It's just backed by paper. Whereas you would have one currency backed by natural resources and gold. That is why you are seeing all these countries buying up gold or repatriating their gold. Now, the question is, so a bit of history, what about the terms? We only hear terms are banned because we're hearing those from Western news organizations. But what we never hear is that, a lot of these uh, loans or they're being built in the currency of that country. They're not being built in US dollars or euros. So that means the payback is also in those currencies or ones, right? So you never hear that aspect of it. And yes, you hear things in parts of, I think it was Asia, where ports after 100 years or countries were not able to pay their debt. And what people don't understand is that a lot of those loans, those countries took those loans from the IMF
Mhm.
or World Bank to get countries, let's say China, to build a project. And they did those in dollars and euros. And so that aspect of things you never ever hear about, that China may have built a port in parts of Southern Asia or East Asia for, let's say, 20 million. Let's let's keep it simple numbers: 1 million U.S. dollars, right? But you never hear that country, in order to get that 1 million U.S. dollars, may have had to go to the IMF to borrow that $1 million with who knows what kind of interest,
Mhm.
right? And now that you're borrowing that money in dollars, and you are a country whose funds are in pesos, so you default on that, which is a domino effect. So where you can't pay for the, let's say, a port. So these are the things you never hear. You only hear one side of how things actually facilitate and how things shape out. And back to your question again is, what's fair? The biggest thing that you see now is, with new banks coming on with the BRICS nations, they're allowing countries to borrow funds in their currencies. And the significance of that is tenfold. It's like, Ryan, if through ACBN, if you say to somebody, we're going to give you a micro loan, you're in Canada, we're going to give you a micro loan in Canadian dollars, they're going to be like, fantastic, thank you, Ryan, this is great. Or you say to the same country, you know what, we're going to give you a micro loan in British pounds,
Mhm.
and we expect you to pay us back in British pounds, but you are a Canadian company, though. So, but it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
it automatically becomes 50% more expensive.
Yeah. So those are contexts that you never hear in the news, and you never hear that when, if Ryan says, "Okay, I'm going to give it to you in British pounds, but just so you know, I'm also going to tell you that, you know, this part of your business where you are selling mangoes, and it's a major part, cut that out.
Wow.
You can no
Right.
longer sell mangoes." So, context.
Yes.
All
Or
right.
you have to buy our mangoes.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So a few things I just want to jump in here. Dr. Tachi says exactly. U.S. currency is worth what it is because people say it's worth that. it's a currency that gets the benefit of the doubt for no reason, actually. It also says, this is such a great explanation,
Mhm.
which is fantastic also. And one other thing I want to just put up here, just give me an un second. Let's add the scene. Oh, you know what? I got it. Okay, I'll let you guys continue. Okay, just give me a second because I
Mhm.
actually want to show the article that this conversation is based on the Daily Scrum. So, there is the actual article from the
Mhm.
Daily Scrum News that we're basing this conversation on. And I will also say, I will put the link to the article in the comment section on most of the platforms you're watching this live on. So you can take a look at it at a later date. What else do I want to do here? So we'll come back to our conversation today. And also, Dr. Tachi, especially, you sound like you're very much into this conversation. So you can always call in if you want. You can all so if just say to people, if you got a question or a take, go to callme.road.com, put in the code FSP L8L, make sure your letters are in caps, click that green button, then fill out your name, and then hit join conversation. I would love to hear more. So I just wanted to get that in. So continue, Ryan, if you wish, or I've got conversation pieces too.
Just to extend on what you're saying, Donovan, because what's happening in Burkina Faso is really inspiring to a lot of people. So now is it a blueprint that can be duplicated? Because what had to be in place for them to be able to claim back all their mines and their resources, literally kick out a country and then but it's like you have to go against who was elected already there. So now the media can spin it like, yo, this is dysfunction in Africa instead of, like you said, an uprising. So I'm curious if what people are seeing the other African nations, can it be duplicated? Like, are the right things in place for that to happen again, or was this more of a one-off?
No, you are. That's a good question. It is absolutely not only being duplicated, it's now becoming the blueprint. If you look at almost all African nations now, they are reclaiming their resources. They are nationalizing their gold mines, their uranium. So all African nations now are on that track to essentially reclaim their resources and make it a national. Now the problem becomes is there are still those ones who are heavily um, tied in with the West,
Mhm.
and their military is so strong and loyal to the president, where they it's normal as is, right? We're going to get our pockets fatted to the the detriment of the people, and but those in turn will, I believe, you'll see the same situations happening throughout the African nations. So it's not only duplicatable; it's happening right now. But one of the biggest impediment to that, I'm not too sure if the audience is aware of what ECOWAS is.
I am
So
not.
ECOWAS is one of the biggest bodies. It's an economic branch that came together to with the notion of having all of the African nations under one branch and advocate for them and be almost like a global military for Africa. If something happens to one nation, they could deploy and help each other. But the
Similar
problem,
to like NATO, like what NATO
yes,
is?
but very loosely. With
Okay, gotcha.
yeah, but the whole problem, it started off great and it was a great concept, but the biggest issue with that, it was backed heavily by the West,
Mhm.
and they really did the bidding of the West. So if the West had a problem with an African nation, they would impose sanctions and ECOWAS would go in militarily or just cut out the sanctions. Now this happened in when Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso um, changed government. ECOWAS immediately imposed sanctions on them and threatened military actions. And so you're saying, so what the African nations says, well, we are part of this organization, but you want to threaten us with military. and sanction us because we are trying to do something different and split off from the Western backed government. So they said, okay, they pulled out of ECOWAS, they formed their own organization called the Sahel States, and more African nations started pulling out of ECOWAS. And so what they did, because a lot of Nigeria is one of the biggest and the lead in ECOWAS, needed their land when you're transporting oil, and they said, essentially, you go to war with us, we're going to cut the oil and we're going to cut the transport routes. And that ended all of that. So, right now, with these African nations, in a nutshell, as they're starting to really hone in on their independence and take control, you're starting to see more of them exiting this group, and it's really falling apart because
Gotcha.
if it's like saying to NATO, you know what? We don't like what Canada is doing right now, so we're just going to attack Canada.
Gotcha.
All right. So Dr. Tachi, who I'd love her to call in because she should be sitting at this digital table, says yes, she has an ECOWAS passport.
Wow.
Okay. Whoa. It
And
created a passport.
yeah, and she says exactly, you can't have the West involved. There's always a motive. And then Frequency of Air Promotions asks, curious, is there a list of how many, quote, natural resources, unquote, the motherland has always had to date, as Africa to me is a developed continent?
Yeah, so that number is easy. I can get that for you. But Africa has it's literally the richest continent, and everybody knows, but it literally is the richest continent on the globe and has every major natural resources you can think of. So in a more macro sense, it has all of them.
But then doesn't that value come from their negotiating power of the value they put on it? Because if people are coming in and extracting it for pennies on the dollar, doesn't that reduce how valuable the resources are until they can control it and put a proper price on it? Does that not, like, it might have the most resources, but they're giving it away? So is that messing with the perception of the value in Africa?
Yes and no. Yes, because you're right, they have no control of it. No, because the control of it is actually being in the refining, right? So right now, the reason why,
I need to politely interrupt.
sure,
Dr. Tachi, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So I'll let
good.
Donovan finish what he was saying, and then you can join the conversation.
So the
Okay.
reason why African nations are so poor, what people say, is because they do not actually have control of their natural resources. So, for example, now you see with Niger and Burkina Faso and all these nations who are nationalizing their resources, is they're saying, instead of us having a Western company come in, take control of our resources, mine it, and ship it out and refine it into their country and then export it back to us, that those days are done. We are going to own our resources, we are going to extract it, and we are going to refine it, because that's the key. When you refine everything, you control the process, you control 100% of the profits, and then we are now going to sell you the final product and we're going to export that. So, because the African nations are taking back control and they're now the refinery, that's where the real money is. So, if I was to, for example, sell you, the current process as it is was in most of Africa, they'll take the gold, ship it out, refine it, and then sell our own gold back to us at 10 times. Those days are done for those countries who have, quote unquote, had a coup.
Absolutely. And my apologies. I love you, Dr. Tachi, but I do
I
have to
know,
hop.
but Ryan's got to go as
Yes. We
usual.
shall talk soon. Always good seeing
All
you,
right,
Donovan.
You
Ryan.
too, Ryan. We'll
All
talk
right,
soon.
take care.
Yes.
All right. So, Dr. Tachi, you are with us.
Good
So,
morning, Dr.
Yeah.
Tachi.
Good morning, Donovan. How are you?
I'm fantastic, and eventually we are going to connect.
Yes.
Dr. Tachi, good to hear you as always. What would you like to share with the conversation?
Well, first of all, this is an excellent conversation, but I get angrier and angrier by the minute
I
as
know
I
that's why I
hear it.
wanted you to come in.
This is not new, and I'm thinking as I'm hearing this conversation, when you go back to this newfound independence, African countries were never independent in the first place, right? When we're looking at this newfound, it just transitioned to another type of neocolonialism after they not that we gained independence, but they let us go. And I say that because they still had their grubby, stinky hands all through the economy, all through politics, everything. And by them, I'm talking about Europe and the United States. It's this is a great conversation to hear, and I'm actually quite sad that this room is not packed. When we talk about um, politics, and especially politics that are or geopolitics that are affecting the diaspora, this should be front and center of everyone's minds. But because as the the diaspora, we're so divided, and we've decided that where we are takes precedence over where we're from originally. I think that's a big problem because this is, to me, a larger conversation than just the inhabitants of the continent. This involves all people of African descent. Because when we look, it's like, okay, that's fine. Look at where you are. You have no resources. Those, the people that live, Black people that live in America, and the Caribbean certainly has resources, but it's a much smaller area than we talk about the continent of Africa. I'm like, if I were you, I would align myself with where the resources are, and we just don't have that mindset. And not everybody, there are some that do, but on the whole, we do not. So I thank you for bringing this up, Dr. Vibe and Donovan, because this is an amazing conversation that needs to be heard far and wide.
Thank you so much. And do you have a few minutes to hang out with us?
I do.
Okay, so just update. We got some comments here. Frequency Event Promotion says controlling the means of production. Ray has probably a question both of you could maybe answer. He says, this is not the first time there has been a quest by leaders in Africa to control the resources. In the 1970s, it was very common. Do you see this as sustainable going forward?
Yes, it's sustainable because there are now mechanisms in place, right? And so let's talk about the two biggest mechanisms in place. Before it was Western Western countries who had their hands in Africa and a stranglehold, and that was the only resources. There was no options. Now you have China. Now you have Russia. Now you have still factions of the Middle East coming in with real money and saying, "There are something we want, and here's something you could have." And then let's look at all of that. Is with that comes real power, and power is in military, and comes whether it be as a de facto backing or real military hardware. So before, African nations never had that. And let's, if you look at, again, I'll continue to use them as the example, is Burkina Faso. If you look at Burkina Faso's military now, that is a real bona fide legitimate military being trained by real generals. So the days of where you saw African militaries riding in jeeps and AK-47 and it looked like something that was just put together, that has changed. And so when you go into nations like this, and if again, let's say a country like France was to say, we're going to try to take this back by force, this is not the Burkina Faso of 10 or 5 or 20 years ago. You're coming in against a real military with real resources backed by Russia and China and dollars buying the Middle East. So it is sustainable.
Dr. Tachi?
I agree. It definitely is. This is definitely a different case than we're talking about even 10 years ago, right? 20 years ago. And here's the thing, though. I don't know that I completely trust Russia, China, and the Middle East either. It's another case of, in my eyes, of this whole thing: the devil you know is better than the angel you don't. In my eyes, they're all devils. So I don't know that I necessarily trust them either, but I do see the necessity in that because you're in a hyper militarized world. You too have to be armed just in case. So I do understand that end of it, but in the back of my head, I still don't trust them either.
Hmm.
I think it's very right to not fully trust anyone. It's in military or in government. It's one of those things. It's how what are you doing right now that can help me, right? And
Mhm.
so if you look at China thinks 20, 30 years down the road, right? Whereas and Russia is their government are stable. They've had the same leader for decades, whereas Westerns are susceptible to fall because, you look at Canada. We can have election any day if the oppositions get together and says, "Oh, we don't like the government right now." So there's even though there are fixed election terms, that could fall, or we've had elections one every year for in back in the days for so there's no long terms. Even though it's the country stable, there's really never a stable government in the US. The similar, you're already year two into the Trump administrations, and people are already starting talking about the midterms. So when you look at these countries, you say, like, you're right about, having interest. It's hard to fully trust anybody. It's that will never happen, and you are correct, Dr. Tachi. The one thing that is the benefit to these African countries is these countries that they're entering into partnerships or deal with, they're long term, and their governments are stable, and their governments are not in a position to be overthrown. And
Right.
the best thing is they are natural, they're the yin and yang to the Western nations, right? So mutual
Yeah.
assured destructions, just as how US and Canada and Europe are going in, backing Ukraine and backing Israel, while and no other, it's hands off. No other nations are doing the same. And to add to that one point, when America went in and struck Iran, you notice the one thing they never touched, or Israel or no American or European allies, was strike the railroad carrying crude from Iran to China.
Mm.
All right. Mr. McMillan has another question for Donovan, and maybe Dr. Tachi will chime in too. He says, appreciate your perspective, Donovan, but where does it leave the middle 60% of the population? How will this impact them? Social economic impact.
I guess the question is, which middle population are we talking? Can you be a bit more specific? Then I could
Okay.
give you a factual answer.
Okay. He'll fill up, and then I'm going to have this question also. In nations where coups occur, are citizens more concerned with Western influence or daily issues like corruption and unemployment?
First of all, they're just happy that there's an opportunity for change, because most of these students or young people or old, there's the economic outlooks are very bleak, right? And so it's seen as, well, how bad can it be? If you look at Haiti, which is just heartbreaking, you just have to go to our site and read what France has done to Haiti. and what America has done to Haiti after they came in and literally stole the Haitian treasury after France has pillaged it. And you look at the average minimum wage in Haiti, I believe it's something like 5 to 10 cents a day or an hour. It's atrocious. So it's heartbreaking. So you say to yourself, um, why not try something different? It's as bad as it is right now.
Anything you want to add, Dr. Tachi?
No, I agree. Especially when you look at the average age, and this is not to be ageist,
Yeah.
but many of these leaders in African nations are Methuselahs. They've been there for donkey years and have done nothing but enrich themselves and their cronies and sent their children to school abroad, have money in Swiss banks. And this is not all, but this is the case for many across the board. And so people are just tired, right? People are weary. So whenever, to Donovan's point, whenever there is the opportunity for some sort of change, that's what they're concerned about. Oh, good, finally. So, and I think the thing with Burkina Faso is he's young. Ibrahim Traore is young. That signifies hope. You see, when we talk about you have to see something to believe it can be so, I think that young people, which constitute like across the continent of Africa, that's the youngest
Huge,
continent.
huge.
Yes, most of the populations in these countries are young.
Young
So when you
people.
see somebody that could be you, this signifies hope. You see, okay, something can happen because this is somebody that is like me, that looks like me. So I 100% agree with Donovan. They're just like, good, finally something may change, and you have to keep having that hope because even though there have been coups in the past, right, where nothing, little to nothing has really changed. You have to keep on that hope. You keep or hold on to that hope. I think one of the reasons, if we look back to Ghana, when they had when Jerry Rawlings came to power, although it was heinous in the way it happened, that really gave hope to people once they started to see the changes that were happening. That really was responsible for, in a sense, where Ghana is today as this powerhouse in a sense, right? So I think when you see young people taking the reins, that really gives a sense of hope.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ray added to his question. So let's go back to his original question. Appreciate your perspective, Donovan, but where does it leave the middle 60% of the population? How will this impact them? Socioeconomic impact. And he's saying on the continent.
Again, to echo what Dr. Tachi just said, it's hope, it's future. Right now, you look at jobs that are being created in house, right? You look at plants being created, where they were never before. And then you also look at is one of the biggest things you never ever hear about is look at the crime rate in Burkina Faso, in Niger and Mali. It significantly dropped, right? Look at the tourism coming there. Airports are being built. So it has a trickling effect. When you are now in control of your natural resources and your rare earth elements, you could use that money now to actually fund projects. So the unemployment rate has dropped significantly because you're getting airports are now being built, massive projects, road construction, end to end, right? Plants. Like, so what it does for the community and the economy is massive because now you're no longer looking to outside resources to fund these projects because the money you're making from actually taking control of your own natural resources and mining them and refining them at home you're producing jobs, but you're now making billions and billions of dollars before that you did not have. And of course, those are dollars that are you're making. You're a country that you're still using the CF francs, which a lot of them are eventually getting rid of for a more stable own currency once they figure out the logistics is. So you have a country like Burkina Faso who are still dealing in the CFA francs and now making dollars. So you're bringing in massive imports of real dollars to a country that is dealing with francs. So it's a massive benefit.
Anything adding, Dr. Tachi, to that?
No, 100%. He said it beautifully. Yes.
Okay. So let me just. Okay. So Ray says, I have never spent any time on the continent, but I have spent extended periods in parts of the Caribbean and do business there. And what I see is political immaturity by the majority of the population. I see a huge distraction presented by American popular culture, which give many a short-term fix while not much changes for the middle population. And he also says, I agree with Dr. Tachi. Much of our population is young, being led by old men. Young leadership is what Africa and the Caribbean needs. Relatable leaders.
Can I say something, please?
You're so polite. You're raised like yes. You can always say something. Go ahead.
The thing. This is our problem as Black people. We like enjoyment too much.
I
Um, Now, enjoyment we like so much. And I understand where part of this comes from because I mean, I think it's in our nature we've always enjoyed enjoyment from the beginning of time. But I think we've faced such trials and tribulations, people of African descent, that you need something to remove the memory and the reality of such hardships from your life immediately. We always manage to turn things into I mean, this is why we love comedy so much, because you have to laugh so that you don't cry, right? But at the same time, because of our love of merriment, this is part of the problem where our focus or foci, right, becomes such merriment to the point that such merriment funds us. If you look at the US, we're in all different categories of employment, etc. But look how much of what we value goes toward entertainment, and it's important. I mean, I'm in content creation and entertainment, so I'm not downing it. But our focus, I think, is there too much. There's too much of our focus there, I should say. So I think that's part of the problem, that we love merriment and enjoyment so much, and to the point that it becomes a chore to become in other things.
Anything you want to add to that, Donovan?
No, Dr. Tachi summed it up perfectly.
I have a question for both of you in regards to media framing, since we're all in the media here. So why do you think Western media labels these events as coups while African outlets call them uprising? How does language shape perception?
Well, the best way we look at it is who benefits from the shaping of the language and the narrative, right? And then when you put it who benefits, then who is to gain, right? And one of the things, and I'm going to use the words of the CIA, who basically said is, and this is why they know a lot, is once a person reaches the age of 25, they are no longer malleable. There is a select on a 95% of them are not susceptible to change. So based on their environment, their upbringing, their political ideology, they cannot change no matter if you introduce new information to them. There's only around 5% or less who could take new information and say, you know what, you're giving me new data. I could adjust and change how I think. I'm one of them. So when you take that same sense and apply that to the media, and the people know this, the people in the media know this, the powers that be know this, that if we could say something, because Americans or Canadians and Europeans, they're so siloed, they're only getting their news from one channel. We could say what we want to shape any narrative, and it's going to work for twofolds. It's going to benefit the news networks financially, and it's going to benefit the governments who want that message um, militarily and politically. So that's my take on why you see the messaging, which you see from the media.
Dr. Tachi?
I agree 100%. Who benefits is the determinant of what it's called. Um, and there are several examples of this type of thing throughout history, especially when it comes to people of color and the things they term what a thing is versus what Westerners or other people may term what it is. The person who frames the story is the one who gets to tell the story and call a thing what it is. I think also that we've been taught, and the word coup has been framed as something bad, right? And I'm not saying it's not, but that is what the media has framed it as. That is what society has framed it, that a coup is something bad. Taking power from whoever's, it's a coup, and that is something bad. And so, in order to keep in order not to feel bad about usurping resources, about going in militarily, about ignoring people and not going in militarily, you have to frame these individuals as incapable and incompetent, and this is what they do. And what would they do is also ascribe, quote, bad words to them as well, like coup. Those are things that they do.
And
So that's my 2 cents.
yeah, and to touch on what Dr. Tachi said about framing, and I'll give you two examples. So, and these are good examples because we're talking about what we are told are the two biggest adversaries to America, and is China and Russia, right? So I have lots of friends and colleagues in both countries, and if you go to Russia, Russians love American people. When you hear them talk about them, um, you hear nothing but nice things, and we're told otherwise. I've been to China a lot and throughout the Asia in my travels, and the Chinese diaspora, they love the American people. And you always hear just positive things about them. And the word America in Chinese translates as loosely, it's something like beautiful country or beautiful people or something. So it's framing, right? And me working for years in both provincial and federal government in Canada, I could tell you it's a huge framing, because what you see the politicians say on TV is actually not what happens behind closed doors when the camera's off. When the cameras are off, it's opposition leaders going out for lunch. It's calling up ambassadors. Can you push this trade deal through? So Dr. Tachi is 100% correct. It's about framing and knowing how to frame. And the governments, it's like Chomsky said, it's manufactured consent, right? You need both to weave this narrative. Both don't, they're hand in hand.
Okay. Ray says, true, Dr. Tachi, we love to dance and sing, and it's good for our souls. What I have seen government do in particular nation is actually fund larger concerts and bring in megastars where folks spend dollars. And also
Mm.
says, we need to remind those who feel bad about the Boston Tea Party and the American Revolution, which can be described as a quote coup unquote against us.
Oh.
All right. How are you guys for time? Because I don't want to keep, because I know you always got things to do.
I'm good for another maybe 20 minutes.
Okay. So I'll bring up some more conversation pieces. How are younger Africans using social media to reinterpret coups as quote revolutions unquote? And what risks does this narrative carry?
Wow. Well, it's a voice. Social media is a voice. Well, here's a perfect example then. Is so social media is really what is connecting the youth and what everybody is seeing, right? And it's what's happening, what's the ground, what's on the ground, right? And I'm going to have to interject something slightly different to give context, right? With the recent sale of TikTok to the Ellis Group, which owns Oracle, which are heavily
And
Israeli.
Paramount.
Yes, and heavily Israeli. Now, one of the biggest things with that was with all the TikTokers exposing what was going on. So as soon as that sale has gone through or started, the algorithm has shifted to seeing a lot of anti-Israeli content, right? So with to bring that back and how that ties into African youth is with when you have social media and you have such a strong generation and they're going in with this eye wide open, right? And they're exposing what's going on and they're exposing the things happening. Not only do they become the real power, they become the factual voice because at this age or the stage of the game, they really have no skin in the game of, I don't like this politicians or I don't like that. They just know I don't like the situation I'm in and we can do better. So they are the massive driver to the future. And again, considering Africa is the youngest continent on the planet, and their voices are huge, monumental.
Anything you'd like to add, Dr. Tachai?
I agree. I think often you will see young African influencers. They're on TikTok. They're on, I mean, I'm not on X anymore, but I know that they're on X. They're on Facebook, and they're talking about these things because, as we talked about before, they're frustrated. They're frustrated with the corrupt. They're frustrated with the inefficient. And there's really, it's interesting because even though you see participation in some things that could be considered colonialist, there is or some aspects of things that came from colonialism, I should say. There's a strong anti-colonial sentiment, I would say. There's also, and here's the thing, and it's not just with Africans, this is social media in general. It's a very good way to spread misinformation as well.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we see some of that also, and this is why I don't think we should ignore social media as a part of all of this, because the best thing that we need to do is to actually educate people. My thing is I always tell people and tell students, look, have you checked with at least 3 sources for agreement before you shared this? And I think people are just sharing things and spreading things without adequately knowing. That's part of this too. So people are using it for good, and they're actually talking about their frustrations. They're organizing and doing things, but then there are also those who spread misinformation via social media. And so that's what we need to get a handle on, to actually teach people to look for agreement in source. If you see agreement, chances are there's some modicum of truth there. But if this is a one-off and then you're just spreading it without having done research, that's problematic as well. So there you go.
Ray follows up with another question. Man, we should have Ray on here too. Ray, you should be calling in,
Yeah.
by the way. He says, great question, Dr. Vibe. We saw the impact of social media during Tiananmen Square. Does the same algorithm exist today to allow the same propagation of, quote, unpopular, unquote, information? Both you two? Oh, Dr. Tachi, love that question.
Yeah.
Go for it, both of you. This is good.
Well, I've been to Tiananmen Square, and when you talk about the algorithms, you also have to talk about is where is the network coming from and what social media, right? And so, like any country, that's a terrible time in any country's history. So the question is, you have to say to yourself is, whoever controls these platforms controls to an extent the message,
Distribution.
yeah, and distribution. And nothing is more prevalent in when you look at the big global players. We are siloed. So whatever they want us to see is what we see. This is the same with Google. This is the same with every other network. So the message will always be siloed. It will always be, to in a sense, scripted or controlled, because everybody has some vested interest in what we as society see. So there will always be a level of control in any media, any country, any message.
Dr. Tachi?
100%. The operative saying here is follow the breadcrumbs. Who owns what? So as opposed to back then when you're talking about Tiananmen Square, when you're even talking about the Arab Spring and how they were able to use social media to spread what was happening. The algorithmically, social media is much different than there. And in fact, during Tiananmen Square, that's not really the age of social media. That's before that. So we were really relying on mainstream media for the messages about that. But when it comes to the Arab Spring, which is a little more recent,
Yeah.
now you're seeing social media as a force being used to show and disseminate what was happening. And it was a big thing, but it also signified danger to some of these big companies. And this is why, if you ask me, they will tell you, no, we're not manipulated. That's rubbish. You are. We know very well that some things are manipulated, whether or not you choose to admit it. So it's a very different algorithm or algorithmic atmosphere, I should say, that exists now than during the time of the Arab Spring.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll ask you to deal with one more conversation piece. So, the African Union often condemns coups, yet some citizens celebrate them. What does this disconnect reveal about governance gaps in member states?
So are we talking? Well, again, it comes down to, right, who is still having a strong connection to France, which leaders are financially benefiting the most. And we've touched on the age of a lot of these leaders. You are right. Africa, it's a massive disconnect. You have the youngest population on the planet with the oldest leaders. You have many of the leaders in these African countries. If you look at it, I would be surprised if the average age was not above 60, 70. Right? So there's a massive, massive disconnect there. And, you know, again, it comes down to, these African unions. what are they going to do to change? And there has not been a lot of change in leadership through these nations. In the last 15 years, there's been 66 coup attempts, 17 successfully,
Wow.
right?
Mhm.
There's, I believe, what is it, 54 African countries. And then the thing is, even though they are elections, these countries are, let's be honest, the presidency's been gifted to their siblings,
Yeah.
right? So, you have countries that have been ruled by the same person for decades and decades,
Mm-hmm.
no change. So you really have to look at it as, with the African Union and places like ECOWAS, who's really benefiting? It's not the people, because if it was the people, then you would have this massive unity. You'd have something as simple like a unified currency, right? You, to this day, flying between African countries is a massive thing, from flying from one country to another, right? Whereas if you wanted to fly from one country, you'd have to literally fly halfway across the ocean to come around and fly back, where there's no inter border travel. So there's all these things that you have to look to yourself and, well, who's benefiting from that? Like, in Europe, it's not like that. You could fly flights back and forth just like that. But you cannot do that in Africa. So you're going to say is, why? Who's benefiting, and what's the real benefit of the African Union if something is that simple is not even in place?
Anything to add, Dr. Tache?
100%. Okay, the African Union, first of all, depending on them to do anything. All these things are theater, if you ask me.
Symbolism.
Symbolism is theater. That's it. So to go to the point of the airline industry, 100%. It really makes no sense. You're on the same first of all, it makes no sense that you can't get to an African country to most African countries without taking a foreign carrier, and you have to stop in their home country first. So this is money that is going to not African countries, but
Yeah.
to them.
Yeah.
And
100%.
most of the time, the biggest ones that are there, the European carriers, British Airways, Air France, which is terrible, Swiss Air, Lufthansa. The large carriers from these European there, because all you have to do is in fact, it's getting ready to happen now. Christmas time, that's when everybody goes back home. These airports, JFK, Midway in Chicago, all of these airports are getting ready to be stuffed with Africans going back, and none of the money from these fares is going to be seen by Africans, right? That's part of the problem. So you hate coups, but look at it, and something small, like we don't have a carrier to take us back home, and we have to then pay another foreign entity to take us back home. These are the things people are frustrated with.
Got it. So Ray says the average age of the 10 oldest leaders is 78 years old. The median age of the population is 19.3. And I just want to add to this. All of us that are on the show right now, and Ray will remember how Bill Gates many years ago saying we got to reduce the population, reduce the population. Africa was the only continent that went against that.
Mhm.
And see, they have a great, great, great labor force that's willing to take that continent to the next level.
Yeah.
Ray also says the deficiency of air transport needs to be more emphasized. Brazil, the nation with the largest Black population outside of the continent, has no direct flight to the continent. Then throw in the cost. Interesting. 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 And Ray also says, because I'm going to now let you, in the next few months, let you both of you go because you have been so fantastic today. Ray says, he goes, my pleasure. This is a conversation that needs to be more common with higher engagement. We need to be conscious of what's happening in the Caribbean and the continent. Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Tachi, did we lose her?
Yes.
Oh, you're
No,
there.
I'm here.
Okay.
Yes.
Any final words about this conversation today?
Wow. That's my final word. Wow. this this was a fantastic conversation. It needs to be had. I'm looking forward to you having it more
Yep,
often,
we will.
Dr. Vibe.
We will.
Yeah, no, and I know will. I just want more people to be interested and care in this. It's or care about this, I should say. We're way too fixated on other things, especially, and I'm talking about Black people now. We're fixated on other things that don't really necessarily involve us or that we don't have control over. And it may not seem like we have control over this, but we do. I think we have worldwide huge economic power, and we need to start to wield that. And then there needs to be a spirit of Pan-Africanism where we're united in this. Again, I'm trying to be. I keep telling people, okay, you keep fighting for whatever. All of this. When the great African spaceship comes to lift us up, you can stay here. Okay, so
I like that. I like that. I like that. And Dr. Tachi, where
yes.
can people find out about all things Dr. Tachi?
Oh, I think the easiest way is if you go to my link tree, and
Oh,
so
you
that's
have one now,
I've always had a link
but
tree.
you've never given it to me.
Oh, I thought I did. Okay,
No,
I'll have to
it's
give it to you.
okay.
If you go to link, it's linktr.ee/dr_tachy. So linktr.ee/Dr_Tachi.
And also, there's always Indie Soup TV, and there's also you can catch you on it Instagram also.
Correct. I'm at Dr. Tachi everywhere.
All right, Mr. Donovan, any final words?
Just appreciative of what you're doing, Dr. Vibe. Dr. Tachi coming in and is fantastic, and you have a fantastic audience. So just again, just super appreciative. We get a platform to express some genuine thoughts of what's going on with the African diaspora, and just have hope everybody continues to be a part of conversations. And like Dr. Tachi says, just question the source, right? And just remember that when news is being presented to you, you always say, who is it benefiting, right? And just be more willing to be open-minded to other sources, and just try to have a more global viewpoint of things you're seeing instead of something more siloed by the local broadcasters or networks.
Well said. If you want more of Donovan and what him and his team offer, go to the dailyscrumnews.com or email info@dailyscrumnews.com. As we wind it up today, it's been an epic conversation. Subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. Also, like the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Substack. If you, as I just gave everything, join our Discord group, you can email me at dr.vibe at the dr.vibeshow.com, or click on the link that you see there, but it's also in the comments section on most of the platforms that you're watching this live or on the replay. Also, to advertise your business, product, or service on any of the platforms that I'm on, email me. Let's see. Oh, Ryan Knight, who it seems like miles ago that he was with this conversation. You can get a hold of him at Ryan Oneil Knight, and that's Knight with a KN, not an N. You can always find out more about me at taplink.cc/the DRVIBESHOW.com. And then you can watch replays of this epic conversation on the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, the Afro Caribbean Business Network on YouTube, and Ryan Oneil Knight on YouTube. As we close out, and there's another comment here. Oh, Dr. Tachi says, this was a great show. Well, you were part of it. You helped make it great. So there you go. So let's close it out here. As always, live your life as a dream. If you can dream, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions, aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. As always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace. And if you're not making money, make history and always make it better. Remember, coming up on Friday, Wayne Harris is going to talk all things, especially Christmas and money. Donovan, I want to wish you a happy holiday season because you're not going to be back with us live unless something comes up until the new year. But I'm sure we'll be chatting between now and then. So always a pleasure to have you on. As everybody else, God bless. Peace,
Thank
love,
you,
faith, and walk good.
This whole thing of using your business with plant-based products, don't you think your life should reflect that too?
Juke him, Carolyn. Juke him. The family loves us here because they're saying Fitness IQ Can says put a wig on to get in.
Oh my God.
Like the ideas are just coming fast and furious here this morning. What? Okay, look at this. Global Women Ambassador. Good morning. Look forward. Okay.